No other crop comes full circle quite like the planting of our fall garlic. Yes, for sure, we look forward to the future harvests of the hundreds of tomatoes and peppers and other crops that we plant each spring, but nothing compares to the cyclic nature of getting garlic cloves into the ground at the end of a long season. And that's mostly due to two things. First, it's autumn, so most of the garden has quieted right down, and not much else is going on. But the main reason is garlic is a long crop, probably the longest crop you'll ever grow. Planted well into the fall, overwintered in the ground, and then harvested the following summer, it feels like we just pulled these bulbs up and we're already planting them back into the ground. And today's video is all about that planting. The weather may be nice, but make no mistake about it, fall and winter are coming. So today, let's cover everything that you need to know to get your hardneck garlic tucked away before that winter hits. That way, next summer, you'll be enjoying your best garlic harvest ever. Nearly all of our favorite crops hit the spring running, producing their harvests as the summer progresses. It's why garlic confuses so many people, because its life cycle is so unique. Not to mention, it's also long. Garlic is planted in the fall, enters a winter dormancy period that stimulates the bulb production, and then it's harvested the following summer, upwards of 8 to 10 months after we first plant them. It's an amazingly self-sufficient crop that literally regrows from itself over and over. But growing garlic does require some patience. Don't get me wrong, it's very easy to grow, and it's relatively pest and maintenance free. However, I think that the long growing cycle over a winter dormancy is what confuses and turns people off of growing their own garlic. But you know what? We can change that. Even though garlic is an 8 to 10 month crop, for nearly half of that, the plants are dormant, completely out of sight. Not to mention, they get planted when almost all of our other crops are done for the year. And as if that weren't enough, at harvest time, there's often enough summer left to still plant another crop in their place. So yes, garlic is a long crop. There's no question about that. But the time of year when it's actually grown and the fact that it's relatively maintenance-free means it's totally worth it. And if that weren't incentive enough, we also need to remind ourselves where the bulk of grocery store stock is coming from. Garlic is light, it stores well, and it keeps for a long time. That means it's pretty easy to ship. So the next time you're buying grocery store garlic, take a look at where it's actually coming from. And it's because of this realization over 10 years ago that I started to grow my own garlic. And I've never looked back. So let's go over everything that you need to know to grow your own garlic successfully and plant a few hundred cloves in the process. What are you doing back there? Okay. Like we mentioned, a new crop of garlic is grown from the individual cloves of your already harvested bulbs. If you're in a pinch, you can use grocery store stock, yes, but starting with name varieties that grow well in your area is the best way to go. Prepping the cloves for planting is super easy. Just separate each one carefully from the main bulb, one at a time. Don't pull too hard though, or you could actually damage them. Just take your time and work your way around the bulb, trying to find that loose one. Once one of them pops off, the rest will follow easily. And don't worry about taking that papery coating off. We actually want to leave it on. Once you've gone through a few bulbs, separate out the larger cloves from the smaller ones, as these are the ones you're going to want to plant. Garlic actually comes in two distinct types, hardneck and softneck. each specialized to grow in slightly different climates. For the northern grower, hardneck is the garlic of choice. More winter hardy, these garlic varieties tend to produce bigger cloves that peel easier and are often more flavorful. Not to mention, these guys produce a delicious, distinct flowering stalk that comes up every spring, known as escape. For warmer climates without a true winter, softnecks are the ones you want. These guys store well, have more cloves per head, and they require less of a winter chilling period to stimulate that bulbing up. To make it easy though, both the hardnecks and the softnecks are planted the exact same way. Mostly. Yes, the depth, orientation, and spacing are identical, but the timing is slightly different. That's because in warmer climates, if you're using a softneck variety, you can get away with a traditional spring planting for a summer harvest. That way, you're skipping the winter dormancy altogether, and you're growing in that familiar spring-summer window like all your other crops. For all other plantings, including the one that we're doing here today, you want to plant your garlic about 4 weeks before your first fall frost date. For most people, that's going to be September, October, or even November. Here where I am in Zone 9B, early to mid-October seems to work the best. The individual garlic cloves are usually planted 1 to 3 inches below the soil surface, pointy end up. Now, this can be done a couple different ways. You can either dig a trench, place the cloves inside, and then fill back in with some soil. Or, if your soil is loose enough and easily worked, you can simply push the cloves down. Either way, keep the paper coating on, pointy end up, root side down. Now, that range of depth that we just mentioned is going to depend entirely on the severity of your winter. Here, our winters are quite mild, so I simply plant my garlic 1 inch deep. If you have longer, harsher winters, however, it may be wise to go a bit deeper. Not too deep though. 3 inches is pretty much the maximum. If we need more winter protection, we can always pile on more mulch, which we'll get to in a bit. For spacing, garlic needs 4 to 6 inches apart between each clove. This is important because garlic really hates competition, especially from itself. If you ever wanted to stunt your garlic into producing tiny bulbs, then don't give it enough space. Check this out. Here's what happens when you plant a whole garlic bulb with no spacing between the cloves. Pretty crazy. After 7 months, this doesn't even resemble garlic. So, want bigger bulbs? Give them the space they need. Like all alliums, garlic is a full sun plant, requiring at least 6 hours a day of direct sunlight, more if you can give it. The growing bulbs do best in a rich, loose, pH-neutral soil that's free of debris and impediments. And while your garlic can tolerate low water conditions for certain periods of time, it's definitely not immune to drought. And on the flip side, it also can't survive poor drainage. So, moderate but consistent moisture, but never actually standing in water. All right, we now know when to plant, how deep to plant, and how far apart to space each clove. Let's go ahead and plant some garlic. Well, right away, we got our work cut out for us. Running a small garden plant business a few years ago, these sets of beds here were used as a storage area, so I haven't grown anything in them in about 4 years. I'm convinced that the soil below is still good, so let's get into it. Planting garlic is 90% bed prep and 10% actual planting. With the state that these beds are in though, 99% of the work is gonna be the prep. But you get the idea. After just a few minutes, the clutter from one of the beds is completely gone, revealing the soil below. When planting garlic, you always want to start out with a nice level bed. It just makes it easier. It simplifies the spacing, and it also helps to get those picture-perfect neat rows. Okay, the soil looks great, but it is a bit dry. There's no transplant shock with garlic, as the cloves are still technically dormant. But it's the moisture that triggers them to sprout. So I always water the soil first to give them a good landing pad. Looking good. I think we're ready to plant. And as we saw before, there's two ways to do it. You can make the pre-dug depressions or trenches to the depth that you need. Or, if the soil is loose, you can just push the cloves down. Today, we're gonna do both. Now, this soil here is definitely not loose, so let's do method number 1 first. The easiest way to make big, long rows nice and neat is to use a hard rake on edge. Alright, like we demonstrated before, I've got my nice big pile of individual cloves all carefully pulled apart. Pointy side up, root side down, simply place the garlic into the middle of the trench, 4 to 6 inches apart. When the green garlic shoots finally sprout out of those cloves, they do it out of the pointy side. So, it's imperative to orient these guys properly. Work your way along that trench, planting the cloves with that perfect spacing. It's really easy, and you can see why this part is only 10% of the whole process. If I'm doing more than one row, I try to make them at least a foot apart, because the garlic foliage, once it's fully grown, actually fans out quite a substantial amount. When you see a garlic patch fully grown, it actually looks like small corn. To consolidate the planting, you can fill back in the trenches with that displaced soil. It's pretty easy. What I like to do though to give the garlic an extra boost, to give it an edge, is to use a nice organic potting mix. For a bed like this with old dry soil, that could really give it a boost. Easy stuff. The entire bed was planted in less than 4 minutes once that bed prep was done. The garlic does get watered at this time, but let's go ahead and mulch first. If we don't, that soil is literally going to get blasted everywhere, possibly unearthing those cloves. You can use straw, leaves, grass clippings, whatever you have. The most common mulch used is clean straw. It's easy to work with, and the young garlic has no trouble pushing its shoots through once it sprouts. Where I live, we have pretty mild winters, so I'm going to go with a mulch layer that's about 1 to 2 inches thick. If you have a harsh or prolonged winter, you can double that or even triple it. Okay, all snug. Finally, we can water. Look at how that mulch layer barely even moves. Not only is that going to help with any overhead watering, it's also going to protect those cloves from the crazy fall and winter storms. Garlic below the soil, soil below the mulch, just like nature does. Okay, we mentioned that there was 2 ways to plant the cloves. Here, I got some 7-gallon fabric grow bags, and they're going to be perfect to demonstrate the second method. First, I'm going to fill them up level to the top with a quality potting mix. Looking good. Level it off and pat it down slightly. Now, just like before, take your individual cloves, pointy side up, root side down, and push them down into the loose soil to the desired depth. As you plant each one, observe the same spacing rules as before. 4 to 6 inches between each clove, 2 to 4 inches between the sides. For the 7-gallon pots, I do 6 around the perimeter, 2 inches from the sides, and then a final 7th one in the center. It's easy work, and as always, my little golden inspector is here to supervise. Some of my best harvests have come from container garlic, truly. If you're cramped for space, or maybe you only have a patio to grow on, give garlic in pots a try. It's really an easy way to get a great harvest. Alright, like before, let's mulch the soil before we water. A nice thick 1-inch layer works great for me, but again, if you're in a colder climate, go a little bit thicker. Do note though, if you're in a really cold climate, garlic in pots may not be for you. Anything that we grow in containers has a greater degree of exposure, and that's going to have a greater risk of perishing over a harsh winter. So, if you live in zone 7 or colder, it's something to think about. Okay, one big watering to consolidate the planting, and that's not only the second method of planting garlic demonstrated, but also an example of container garlic as well. Good stuff. Although fairly straightforward, taken as a whole, that was a lot of info. The worst thing that could happen would be to commit 8 to 10 months of growing garlic, only to get a subpar harvest next summer. This was just one bed of 20 cloves out of 15 beds I still have left to plant. So while I'm doing that, how about we reinforce the main points of planting your own garlic? Depth, space, and time. While it may seem like the plot elements of a sci-fi movie, these are the 3 main factors governing your garlic planting success. Starting 4 weeks before your first fall frost date, garlic is planted anywhere from 1 to 3 inches deep below the soil surface. The severity of your winter is going to dictate where you fall in this range. Now, no matter where you grow though, garlic is best spaced 4 to 6 inches away from the next clove and 2 to 4 inches away from the sides of the bed or pot. For the actual planting of the cloves, there's usually 2 methods that are used. Either digging a trench or depression, placing the clove in pointy side up, and then filling back in with either the loose soil or some extra potting mix. The second method works best when you're already starting with a loose soil, such as you would when planting in pots or containers. With this method, you simply push the clove down, pointy side up, to the desired depth. Basically, it eliminates a step. Regardless of the method used, after planting you want to mulch heavily with straw, leaves, grass, or a combination, and give the garlic a good soaking. Some people do fertilize their garlic at this time, but really, it's not necessary. Within about 4 weeks, that garlic should be entering dormancy. There are cases where your garlic may or may not sprout before winter, but this is not an indication of how successful the planting is. As long as you got the right depth, the right amount of spacing, and you planted them at the right time of year, you're going to be successful with the garlic. The great thing about garlic is it's one of those set it and forget it type of crops. But that only works if you set it up right. The planting stage of the individual cloves is the most hands-on that we're going to get with this crop for its entire life cycle. All right, hopefully today I've shown you everything that you possibly need to know to plant your own garlic successfully this fall. And I look forward to hearing from all of you guys next summer come harvest time when you get to pull up that amazing bounty because you grew your own garlic. Hey, thanks so much for watching, guys. I appreciate the support more than you know. And if you're getting value from these videos, please like and share them to spread the word and help your fellow gardener to grow better.